One other thing to keep in mind when you're putting together both a flat or a platform is make sure your fasteners go into what they're supposed to go into, especially when you're shooting your toggles. Okay? What can happen, because you can't see through plywood, so you're trusting on your measurements in your line to be right. Once you put your toggles in, once you put your screws or your staples through your facing or your decking into the toggles, flip over your flat, flip over your platform, and check to make sure that you hit all of your toggles. Okay? With this one, we've got some fasteners that are sticking out that missed. Okay? If there are any that missed, remove them, get them out of there, make it safe, and try again. Okay? I'd rather you spend an extra 20 to 30 minutes redoing those than somebody getting tetanus because they put their hand on it. Make sense? Okay, so always check your fasteners. Toggles are the worst offenders. Also check your corners. Okay, all of that. Sometimes what can happen, especially when building frames like this, what can happen, and that's why we have a rule, which I'll talk about in a second. Staples can find some kind of imperfection in the wood, like a knot, which is the densest part of the wood. Okay? If it tries to hit that, it won't be able to go through, so it'll glance off. And if it finds its way out, it can poke out through the surface of your material. Okay? Two things about that. One, if that happens, you want to take that staple out. If you can't get it all the way out, clip down what's sticking out and hammer it into the surface so that it doesn't stick out and nobody can get their hand caught on it. Second thing, that's why we have a rule with the pneumatic stapler. You always want to keep your hand twice the distance away from the gun as the length of your staple. So if I'm shooting 1 1/4 inch staples for this, I want to make sure that my hand is at least 2.5 inches away from the gun when I'm stapling. Twice the distance of the length of fastener. Okay? That's so, just in case it hits that interior piece, if I'm holding it right here, and it hits something inside the material and decides to come out, it's going into my hand. Not a good thing. Okay? So we move our hand out. Still gives us the support. It's not going to be as nice as it would be if you were right there. If I could sit here and put my finger there and make sure that it's flush as I'm stapling. So what you do is you hold over here, you flush it, you move that finger, you staple. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Again, it'll make more sense when we're actually doing it. But I don't want to have to drive anybody to the hospital. I had a friend who actually got like that went into the bone. She ended up having an infection. She had to do some physical recovery stuff. It was not great. So be safe. Toggles, attach the toggles, and these things. Great. Questions about platforms? Okay. One other note, so we were talking toggles every 2 feet. Also, if we're talking legs for a standard platform, standard platforms need legs every 4 feet. Okay? So on a standard platform, you need 6 legs. 1 in each corner, and then 1 to support the center on each side. Okay? General knowledge for you guys going forward. Okay, moving on to flats. Which of the 2 types of flats is this? What are the 2 types of flats? Huh? Hollywood and Broadway. Is this Broadway or Hollywood? Broadway. Why is it Broadway? Because it's thin and it goes in the fly space. Plywood. Okay? Takes up less space, so we can store more of them. Why is this the Hollywood? Because it can stand up on its own on a sound stage. Okay? It doesn't need to be supported from above to stand. This one does. If I try to stand this on its own, it's going to fall off. Okay? Alright. Now, I bring that up because these 2 flats are assembled slightly differently. Broadway-style flats are assembled with their frame on flat, meaning that instead of having the smaller dimensions of the frame pointing out like we see on our platforms, which just so everybody knows, platforms are always going to be constructed like a Hollywood flat. Platforms are never constructed on flat like this. Because the longer side, because this is the way that gives us the most support. If we turn the 2x4s on the other side, they don't give us the right support. Okay, they're not going to be strong enough for what we need them to be used for. Okay? Broadway style flats are constructed on flat, which means that all of the framing is flat. Okay? That's what it means on flat versus on edge. On edge meaning like that. Okay? This means that a staple can't really go through here. What's this dimension? If it's a 1x3, what's this dimension here? 2.5. Right? So we would need a 5-inch staple, according to our rules, to get into them. We don't have a 5-inch staple. I don't have a 2.5-inch staple. Okay? So we're not going to be able to fasten through the frame like we usually do. So we use what are called corner blocks and keystones. Corner blocks for the corners, keystones for the toggles. This doesn't have any toggles in it, so I can't show you the keystones, but I can explain them. Corner blocks are pieces of gluon that are cut to be triangles, because the triangle outside of the arch is the strongest shape. Right? So we use our triangles. It gives us plenty of attachment area, surface area to attach onto both of our boards there. We always want to staple for these in a 5 pattern, like you see on a dice, on a die. Okay, so 4 corners and 1 in the middle, because that brings in the triangle again. 4 triangles, nice and strong. Okay, so for this side where the board goes all the way up, you shoot 2, 2, and 1. For this one that goes across, 2, 2, and 1. Okay, sometimes you have to get a little bit creative with it, but you're trying to aim for that 5 pattern, corners and center. Okay, corner block, keystone goes for the toggles. Originally it was shaped like a keystone in an arch. Okay, so more like this, larger on one side, smaller on the other side, flat. So it's still a, is that just a regular polygon, or is it parallelogram? I can't remember. Now, they're just constructed as rectangles. Okay? There's no reason to have that extra little wide bit. It just makes creating them more difficult. Okay? So they're just rectangles of gluon that are used to attach the toggles into the frame, much like you do with the corner blocks. Okay? And they're just a strap. One thing you want to keep in mind when you're attaching corner blocks and keystones is you always want to inset them at least an inch into the edge of your frame. Can anybody figure out why you might want to do that? On all sides. What if I have to put 2 frames together at a 90-degree angle? Okay, so I've got this one, and I've got another one that wants to go in like this. Okay, in order to get a nice clean surface, I don't want anything on the back of this board right here up to an inch, so that this can sit flush with that whole surface, so that I don't have any gaps or anything like that that I need to fill. Okay, because the frame with the 3/4 ply and the 1/4 inch of gluon, the frame is an inch thick. So by setting that in an inch, I don't have any gluon that'll push any other platforms away from the frame. Make sense? Otherwise, when I put my frame on, we'll have a little gap right here between the framing and the next flat. Okay. So, corner blocks, keystones. Questions about Broadway flats? Still constructed the same. Rails are the long ones on the side. Stiles are top and bottom, and toggles are the interiors. Okay? And then we've got the Hollywood flat. Okay, stands on its own. Frame is built on edge. Okay, you'll see that we have a lot more of these than Broadway styles, and it's because we don't have a fly system. It doesn't benefit us to make Broadway style flats. Okay, so we make Hollywood, that way we can use them a little bit more freely. Okay, we can screw them before with them, stand them on their own and all that fun stuff. Okay, so assembly goes much the same as you would for any of the other frames. Put the corner, glue, square, staple. Okay, 2 staples in each corner, just like with the screws on that guy. Yeah, we already talked about the fastener length, so 1.25" for these guys, and then 3/4 for fastening the little one on. Okay, always do the toggles. Yada yada. Trying to think any other important information for the flat. Okay, so one other thing that you will have to do with the flat that you won't have to do, both flats that you won't have to do with the platform is countersink. Well, not countersink, but nail set. Okay. So we don't want the surface of any of, well, we don't want the heads of any of our fasteners to stick out over the surface of the material, right? Okay. With screws, we can sink them in just by continuing to go forward. Okay. If for some reason your screw won't sink, it's because the hole that you're trying to put it in has stripped. The threads will no longer grab into it. Pull that screw out and try to put it in a different location. Okay. With staples, if it doesn't go in all the way, does anybody remember the tools that you will need to get it set in? It's a help. Set your nails in place. Okay. Set your nails. Nail set. Okay. So you're going to use a nail set and a hammer. Nail set, like I said before, has a pointy area on the end. Usually what you're going to see is a flat spot at the very end with a small little indent, little divot. And that helps to keep that nail set on the head of the screw or the staple. Or the nail or staple, not screw. Okay? And you come with the hammer and you tap it to get it sunk in. Okay? Then you'll come back with joint compound and putty, spackle up the front to make it nice and smooth, sand it to get any extra spackle off after it's dried, and paint. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns on any of these frames? I think I've covered everything that I wanted to tell you guys today. Be very vigilant when you're putting framing and everything together that you're using the correct length of fastener. I can see, the only reason that I bring it up is because right now I can see that somebody used the too long of a fastener to put something in, and they missed. Okay? And it didn't get removed. So, if I ever see you using the 1.25" staple to staple something through Luan, be angry. Okay? 3/4 to go through Luan, 1.25" to go through 1x. For screws, 3 inches to go through 2x4s, and 1 5/8 to go through 3/4. Okay? If you ever do something other than that, follow the rules or ask me. Alright? If there's no other questions, that's all I've got for you guys today. I will see you on Friday. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.